Hello, and welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric. What's up, everybody? And you all will notice that Colin is back. Hey, buddy.
How we doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am all right. I was a little bit caught off guard to get your message about this. High key, didn't realize we were confirmed as a series on this. So thanks for having me back.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Character Backstory series. Yeah, I'm excited. People seem to enjoy the first one.
Hey, cool.
And so we're going to keep rolling with it with Boren Stone Shadow. Yeah, that's his name.
What's his face?
I
have put no further thought into this because I fell in love with him while we made him, and then I just have to let him go.
Yeah,
I'm not going to play him. I have to let him go.
Now we get to dive back into him. Last episode, the first episode of the series, we talked about how with the character backstory, I like to start with the present, who they are now, and then go back and establish the backstory after that point. So we did all that. So if you need a refresher on who Born Stone Shadow is, I keep wanting to say Storm Shadow, Stone Shadow is, go watch that video because there's no point in recapping. Because
then come back here.
Born Stone Shadow is a Mountain Dwarf Hexblade Warlock, Colin. And we're setting this in the world of Eberron. So that's the proper nouns. And we're not married to a system necessarily. We're saying Hexblade Warlock, but this could be applied for any tabletop RPG, not necessarily just D&D. But now that we have who the character is, like it's session 1, who Born is when you're playing him, now we can really start to think about how he got to that point. And we had a very loose just category of he lost his community, and that's what he wants to find again. When I'm thinking at a high level about character backstories, I think archetypically and in chart format, if that makes sense. So a character's backstory should be made of highs and lows. But I think that there are some archetypes that we can look at for different characters. So like somebody like Harry Potter or Batman are going to start, if your x-axis is time elapsed and your y-axis is like happiness/fortune, they're both going to start super high. They were born into very good circumstances, and that was taken away from them immediately. And then they hit a very low point that kind of persisted until the adventure called. And so for Batman, that would be Batman Begins, where he starts training to become the Batman. Remember, your character is level 1. So you're not creating the hero at the end of their hero's journey. You're creating them at the very beginning. So somebody like that, where you were very fortunate, it was all taken away from you. And then you had a prolonged period of very low happiness until something occurred. Like in the case of Harry, he discovered that he had like a hidden heritage. In the case of Batman, he had the decision to take action. Depending on which comic or movie you're reading, there's a multitude of reasons why he ultimately decides to take that action. But then you have somebody like Maximus from Gladiator, who the chart is a very steady progress upward, worked very hard, got skills, got power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then right before the adventure starts, all taken away. And so then you have a character who, the first type of character has grown accustomed to their lack of happiness and fortune. They don't like it, but they're accustomed to it. Whereas a character like Maximus, at the beginning of the campaign, would be reeling from the loss. They would have vengeance on the mind kind of thing, as opposed to something like justice. And then one of my favorite archetypes is Luke Skywalker and or Neo from The Matrix, where if it's a scale of 1 through 10 on the happiness scale, it's like a 4, and it's just there. It's a mundane, boring life that they don't like, but it's safe, it's comfortable, it's bleh, and then something happens to cause the adventure to start. But it's just a very boring line. And I think
the call to adventure.
Yeah. And I think there's something very fun to that kind of backstory as well. It's not as exciting. It's not super dynamic. You don't get to say, oh, an orc band came through and burned my village. It was like, no, yeah, it's fine. I'm excited to be here. But yeah. And a lot of
I
this
love that
also
as your
depends.
Keanu impression.
That's what Neo said when he came out of the Matrix, right?
Nailed
"Eh,
it.
I'm excited to
Nailed
be
it.
here." But and a lot of this depends on the type of campaign, because obviously a backstory like that really benefits from a removal of the veil, like in the Matrix or in Star Wars, where it's like the world that you know isn't real, or there's so much more to you and the world that you exist in, and then getting to pierce that, and that's when the adventure starts. Whereas if you have a campaign where it's much more job focused, like you're a mercenary or something, then that backstory doesn't play as well, because it's, yeah, no, it's just a paycheck. Just took the
Right.
job. Yeah. A lot of it depends on the campaign. But for the purposes that we have here today, Colin, we don't need to worry about that because it's not actually for a campaign. Now, I'm not saying that you need to pick a charted archetype right now, but I wanted to put that out there just so you could have it in your mind as some various paths that your character could take. But in my mind, anyway, generally speaking, you don't want your character to have a high happiness right when the campaign's starting, because then why in the world are they going on an adventure? So,
Everything's
yeah,
great. I hope nothing changes while I go slay dragons.
yeah. Adventurers are not happy people, generally speaking, at least starting
Fair.
out.
Restaurant managers.
I'm
Let's play D&D.
sorry, buddy. Okay, so part one is the formative years. So this is where we started at the present. Now we're going all the way back to the beginning. So, generally speaking, what type of environment did Boren grow up in? And I'm talking not like physical environment, but like
Right.
like peaceful, tumultuous, prosperous, unfortunate, etc.
I would say that going with the idea of the dwarf background, I would envision that he had a very tight community. And especially
Okay.
knowing that's his surge today, it would have been a very cheery, optimistic kind of an upbringing.
Okay. Cheery and optimistic. Very nice. Okay. And this question, so in a future video, we are going to get into actual creation of NPCs and things like that for your game master to utilize in the game and for you to flesh out. But for our purposes here, simple, keep it vague, for like a better way to put it. Did Boren have any siblings or close friends?
Yes to both.
Yes, to both siblings and close friends. Okay. And how did these relationships influence Boren in his early years?
I'm going to say, I think Boren, being from a happy place, was good with his family and close with his friends, which is why communication has been a strong suit for him.
Okay.
Always grown closer to people that weren't the people he lived with.
Yeah. Don't love that. Can you recall an important or transformative event during his childhood?
We didn't discuss.
Don't know why I phrased it. Can you recall?
Yeah.
Create.
Can you make up? Can you pretend? Because as soon as you said, can you recall, I started thinking my childhood, and I just look like a dwarf. I'm not actually one. I just have the aesthetic.
And it could be important and transformative to Boren. It doesn't, from an outside perspective, it doesn't have to be important or transformative. But to Boren, it was.
I would say, based on how we described his interactions at the bars today, I'm going to go with there would have been an event where he was probably being rude to someone of what he, not in an elitist way, but was making fun of a profession, and was sat down and told about how everyone's contribution to the community was equally valuable.
Okay.
That conversation you have as a child about how important the garbage man is.
Yeah.
And sticking with my real life, how important the bussers in a restaurant are. That kind of a conversation coming from, we'll say, his father.
Okay. And we touched on this, but what long-lasting impact did that event have on Boren?
Instilled the idea of equality across all life. Yeah, that's going to be living things have value and people have equal value.
Nice. Did your character have a mentor or significant figure in their early years? No? Okay.
No. I know that might seem like the boring choice, but I like the idea of the self-taught, knowing that whatever we're building here is going to be taken away in some form. I like the idea of not having had someone to look up to.
So the follow-up question that is, how did this shape their personal development? And so for you, it sounds like you're saying that instilled in Boren a strong sense of self and self-determinism of, if
Mm.
something's going to be done, I need to be the one to do it.
I have, yep.
Um,
It's got to get done. I better do it.
cool. And then the last question for the formative years section. What was the best part about Boren's childhood?
Family dinner,
Okay.
consistent. It was always there. And Boren had the kind of family household where the friends could come for dinner and not have questions asked. So it was everybody's
Yeah.
family at dinner.
Very nice. And the worst. And this is of childhood specifically. So we could have the loss of community happen here if you want, but we don't have to.
Boy, that's a good turn that I really should have been more prepared for. It's almost like I should have known that would be the second half of this question. Also, super glad you have editing abilities. The worst would be the loss of his youngest sister,
Okay.
which had its own dark sense of beauty because it was the family in pain together, but it's a dark period losing a child.
Yeah. Discovering a path is the second section. And also, another thing to keep in mind, we have the loss of the community lingering in this whole backstory section, but we also have the fact that Boren is a Hexblade warlock. So at some point, he found a Dang Dong sword that is now with him and potentially speaks to him or just has compulsions or whatever. But Boren is a warlock, so that pact needs to come into play. And having not played a warlock before, Colin, I'll just give my high level thoughts. It could be a pact that Boren himself made. It could be an inherited pact that like he got from his family. It could be something that he was tricked into taking. It could be something that he took in a moment of desperation. All these things are valid. So there's no right way for a warlock pact to work. But with a Hexblade pact specifically, it talks about how it is manifested in a sword. So that's just something to keep in mind as we get into the discovering a path and the subsequent sections as well. So, discovering a path. Was there a pivotal event that steered them toward their current path?
Yep.
Was it?
Oh man. I thought it was yes or no. Being the lineage that he is, the mining community, he was playing, might not be the right word, exploring in old mine shafts.
Okay.
And that is where he located the discarded sword.
Okay.
In the mine shafts. And that is the turning point moment for his life.
Okay. And since we're getting into this, does the sword speak to him? Can he hear a voice in his head, or is it more feelings, compulsions, that kind of thing?
It does speak. Yes.
Okay. Does Boren view the voice as a benevolent or malevolent
Malevolent
being? Malevolent. Okay.
More leaning malevolent, more bored.
Okay.
But chaotic neutral.
Okay, cool. How did Boren acquire their skills? So we're starting off as a warlock, Hexblade warlock. So you do have some martial ability with the sword itself, but you will also work in a harbor as a shipsmith and stuff. So those skills also pertinent. So
And level 1. So
and level
not
1.
great with his sword. A fair amount of messing around with it, but then also brought it back with him to the village and didn't get looked at oddly for it. And so those who knew something taught him the fundamentals.
Okay.
Just the very level 1 standards of how to wield a sword.
Yeah. Enough to have proficiency in it.
Yep. Combined with coming from the mining community, he's got the physical strength to wield a sword.
Yeah.
So that came pretty naturally. Swinging things was not something that was foreign to him. And so he's not deft, and I wouldn't say fully trained, but more practiced.
Okay. And does Bourne get the sense that his ability to wield the hexblade, and just, you can also cast spells and stuff like that as a result of being a warlock, but the physical aspects of being a hexblade, does Bourne get the sense that is also magically abled? He is assisted by the sword in wielding the sword?
Yes, which is why when you meet him in the docks, he's not actively wielding,
Okay.
because that's not his hands alone doing things.
Okay. Cool. Was there a moment of realization? Okay. Since this is a very generalized version of the question, I'm going to make it more specific for Boren. The generalized version of the question for the viewers: was there a moment of realization where they knew this was their destiny? Can you describe it? So, obviously, part of being a warlock is your patron wants something from you or wants you to accomplish something. Does Boren know what that is?
No,
Okay.
but it's there. You get the sense that it's absolutely going to be asking for things.
Okay. So, up to this point, what type of things has the sword asked of Boren thus far?
When he
We don't
was
need to get into
interacting with
specific
it,
quests, but yeah.
right, when he was interacting with it in the village, it was hunting. It was there were the standard bandits that would come through, and part of the current hesitance to use was that in defense of the village, it wasn't enough to beat. The sword, along with the telling, would give a compulsion to end the threat.
Okay.
The sword prefers murder. Prefers death, not murder, to be clear.
Yep. Cool.
Our own game has led me to make sure that I'm specific about those differences.
Who, and we touched on the fact that there were some people that helped teach the fundamentals, but who in Bourne's life supported him in this endeavor and who opposed him?
In the endeavor of learning
The
to
sword,
wield,
using the sword, learning to cast spells, that kind of thing.
his mother
Or opposed.
was supportive.
Okay.
And his father was opposed for the same reasons, because his mother knew that he wasn't dating, he wasn't talking, he wasn't settling anything down as close as he wasn't invested in the village. And so she wanted him out, not in a hostile, but bigger, better, go abroad. You are the child who will leave and do other things. Not great things, but you will go do other things.
Yeah.
And as the oldest son, Dad was very much get to work, be productive, be a part of things, deepen what I've built. Kind of opposition.
Okay. And what personal strengths or weaknesses became apparent in Boren as he continued to pursue his training?
Boren likes winning. And the sword's hunger for use is an intoxicating thing. Winning is nice. Winning has a cost when using this. And so that would be also the weakness, is he cannot refuse. He gets caught up in the action.
Okay.
The plus side is there's far fewer bandits these days.
Yeah. Okay. And that is section 2.
Cool.
Next section, moments of triumph and despair.
Ooh.
So now we're getting into the high and low points. So what has been a major victory or success in Boren's life? This doesn't have to relate to the sword, doesn't have to relate to family, it could just, but it can if you want it to. But
I think I do. And it's going to have been, and I don't on the spot have enough for the specifics of it, but it would have been helping his village defend against a substantial threat and having been hailed as the hero of that event.
Okay, heralded as hero. And this is after he's had the sword.
Yes, this is with the use of the sword.
Okay. How did it shape their self-esteem and worldview?
Oh, that is a great question. Self-esteem, because he was valued for doing things outside of the labor that his father had said they were obligated to. And that was the realization that he could. And I want to be clear that at this young age, we're not talking about being more, but he
Yeah.
could be other than his
Yeah.
destiny as he had known it up until then. His view of the world, it made it broader and more cynical, I would say, because it called to question a quality of life.
Okay. So Bourne had just killed all these people and everyone seems super happy about it.
Yeah.
So how much value could their lives have had?
Yeah. So they must not be equal if it's
Yeah.
celebrated that they're dead.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Inverse. What have they experienced a devastating failure or
Loss has to be that I don't think Bourne has any surviving family at the moment.
Okay.
I believe the family has died.
Is there an event that caused that, or has it been death by 1,000 cuts?
That my thought is I don't think the village is in existence. I
Okay.
think it was a decimation of the village. And I like the idea of it having been the faceless foe as opposed to losing a battle, whether it's a disease that came through, that there was an illness that he and two other people that had gone to a city didn't fall victim to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're all that is left. And that's why he headed for the farthest opposite of what he had.
And also, I think that's interesting because it's something, even if he were there, he couldn't have fought it.
Yeah.
Like
There's no,
this.
there's the feeling of I should have been there. They died without me. But there's also the helplessness of if I had been there, even this sword can't help me.
Yeah.
Against this.
So we're towing on it, but what were the emotional and psychological effects on Borin?
In the moment of his return, I love the imagery of the realization, the walking in. Obviously, the village would have been just in shambles, and seeing his family and then walking straight out and piling.
Numbness?
I'm sorry?
Like numbness? Like
numbness, yes. And preparing the ground, burying his siblings, his mother, his father, and then not even returning to the house after having retrieved the last of their corpses and leaving that place forever. So a numbness for sure, but also I think more a callousness, because this is friends and family. No one's left. Yeah. And so just the overwhelming feeling of I have nothing.
Yeah.
And a desire to go and after a period not be alone, but also not form bonds.
Yeah.
Because that you will lose them.
Yeah. Okay. Very sad.
Yep.
And
I don't like this
next
guy.
one.
I love him.
How did these experiences, both the major victory and the devastating loss, influence their future decisions and actions? So now we're getting into like connecting what we talked about last time with now of like, how did these two things create Borin in his current state?
I think that's why he's got the job he does, engineering changes on ships and working in the boatyard. He's good at it. Naturally sees them and things make sense. And so he's able to get that sense of accomplishment from the consistent attaboys. But with the having lost, that's why he's the dude at the bar every night with those single serving friendships. He gets to celebrate being around people, enjoy the merriment of flash friendship, and then also have the safety now of going home to his apartment that's all his, that
Yeah.
he doesn't have anyone in to lose.
Okay.
Just him and his sword, who is very bored.
Is there, or what has been a moment of redemption or a major lesson learned that sticks with Boren since he's left his village? Something that's caused a crack in that facade to begin to form.
A crack in the facade of
The callousness, the refusal to form close bonds, or even maybe a bit of the cynicism about the equality of life that he developed, like who Boren has become in the present. Is there something in a bit more recent history that has caused him to begin to the beginning of the questioning of his worldview? And I said, has there been? What has been? Like there, yeah,
there was a favorite pub, and we had established that he's a bar hopper, goes from location to location, but that's now because it had been that there was a favorite place.
yeah.
And one
I
of
have in my
the
notes that he goes to a bar, so that has changed now.
no, I like okay, perfect. Then that's still the favorite bar. However, it's freshly reconstructed after one of the local street gangs had an altercation with the owner,
Okay.
who was not willing to accommodate to whatever their demands were, and
Yep.
they had burned it. And it has been rebuilt since. And Boren had not defended and saw someone who he didn't love necessarily, but who he appreciates be affected by his inaction,
Okay.
and to go home and be reminded by the blade that he could have stopped this person from hurting. He could have helped this has been the niggling little thought in his head of almost a call to action
Okay.
to do more.
Nice. And what have they lost or had to abandon in order to achieve their current circumstance? Something that
Intimacy.
willingly had to give up.
They are not actually close. We'd said before that they're the really good listener because they love
Yeah.
hearing other people's stories and participating in the receiving half of other people's experiences. And they are, Boren is not close to any.
Nice.
That's what he has lost on a character level.
Okay. And now the last section, part 4, relating to the present. So this is where we've already started connecting those dots, but now we're really going to do it in earnest with, as a refresher, just for the viewers, motivations and goals is what we're looking at right now with this next question. Boren's motivations, like acquire a new skill set, earn enough money to buy properties, stop adventuring, establish a home, etc., are the things, or sorry, those are the long-term things.
Long term.
Short term, see new places, do new things is a short-term thing that he wants to do. And he doesn't currently have any strong relationships, but he wants them, wants to recapture what he's had in the past, that kind of thing. So all of that coalescing into the question, how does your character's past experiences reflect in their motivations and goals?
The loss of the bar and the call to participate is what refers his mindset back to having defended the village
Okay.
and realizing that he is complacent and not satisfied. And what he wants is he wants to find something that is worth getting invested in. And he wants to be a person who gets invested.
Nice.
The time for numb has passed.
Very cool. Are there unresolved issues or unfinished business from their past? So not speaking about like the issues of having lost everyone and all that, but like material issues, like things from Boren's time in the dwarven community that still linger that could come back to play in the campaign. This is basically, what are you willing to give the DM to play with. Establish that there are a couple other survivors from the village,
Yep.
but is there anything else that is lingering?
I think there's a debt of some kind that his father owed. I don't believe the debt was originally monetary, but that's the way it was being repaid, which is why get to work, participate, and contribute to the family was so important for his dad. And that debt could be owned by someone outside of the village still. That's unsure. Dad definitely owed someone though, which is why we never expanded on his successes.
Okay. How does their personal history, so not really the experiences, but like the history of Boren's life, influence their present behavior, reactions, and worldview? So this is like the dwarven culture that he was brought up in, that kind of thing.
That's good.
Or like even the things, his mom being supportive, but his dad opposing the use of the sword, or people helping him with the sword, like the littler moments.
I think those littler moments are why he is popular in the shipyard. He's the guy who will help with the things on the ships that aren't necessarily his responsibility. Something needs moved while he's on there making a change, he'll set his hammer down and go assist with that. He's got the good nature still in him of that village and of that upbringing. And
Okay.
with the family dinners having been the highlight of his time, he is the guy you want to have a drink with. The person that when you come back to that particular harbor, you go, let's see if we can find Boren. He is highly social.
Nice.
Which others read as self-confident.
Specifically with like the lingering problems of the fact that he wasn't able to save the village, he wasn't there, etc. Has Boren made peace with that, or is he still struggling with it?
With not having been able to be there when
Not being there, like the combination of survivor's guilt and additionally the fact that he wasn't there to try and stop it either. Like he couldn't save them, but also
I think so.
He survived.
Okay? I think so. I think the challenge for him is the lingering sense of loss rather than the helplessness.
Okay. All right. And what elements of their history would Boren like to hide or forget?
Hide the sword.
So he doesn't bring the sword out like he did when he was in the village.
Yeah,
okay.
No, not yet. He hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a now foreign feeling to him.
Cool. Okay. So that is Boren Stone Shadow's backstory, like timeline of events.
Little jaunt through his history.
And there's a ton cracks that we could dive deeper into, like loss of the youngest sister. What happened there? What was the actual thing that took out the village, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But those are elements that I would encourage people to not fill in yet, because the dungeon master might have some cool elements that they're planning for their campaign that they could insert into. Like maybe the faceless foe that took out the village is some element of the larger threat of the campaign, or maybe the thing that took out the younger sister, or there's still lots of areas that we can build upon, but you want to allow your game master as well as your fellow players to be able to interact with your character's backstory in some interesting ways. So that is where we're going to leave this for now. The next episode, we're going to get into non-player characters. Specifically, we're going to establish the family and relationships and rivals. And Boren didn't have a significant mentor, but there were people that taught him how to wield a sword and stuff like that. And then additionally, when Boren came to this strange foreign place, somebody had to get him into the ship's right game and stuff like that. So we're going to start establishing that and turn them into compelling NPCs that the game master or other characters can use to connect to your character with. So, Colin, how are you feeling about Boren Stone Shadow?
That he is dark and I love it. I'm into it. I'm into it.
It was very fun to see the transformation from what came across as a somewhat cynical and pessimistic, but very affable dwarf just chilling at the bar and then building it out to, okay, here's the complexity of it. Because
Yeah.
establishing the present state is difficult in its own right, but you get a very shallow picture of the character. And now we're starting to build down, which is very fun and interesting. No real homework for you, Colin. We can brainstorm and workshop like we have been up to this point. I'll wait a month before I text you, so you'll have time to forget about all of this and be like, hey, let's go tomorrow.
I'll wake up just in time to film before work.
Yep. So, well, if you all want to see more of Colin, sorry, BTR, the O is a 0 over on Twitch and the socials. Colin is also on Kyber Shards, an actual play 5th edition game set in Eberron that I also play on. If you want to go check that out at the Laughing Tree YouTube channel. And anything else you want to plug?
That okay. If you haven't listened, check out the I Never Got Into That podcast. It's a fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been Eric, and we'll see you next time.